The family of university student Tyler Clementi reportedly has filed notice that they could sue Rutgers University. At least they have preserved their legal rights to do so. Clementi is the freshman who killed himself after his roommate spied on his sexual encounters using a computer camera. His family says Rutgers failed to implement or enforce policies that could have prevented that. So, how far should colleges and universities have to go to prevent tragedies like this from happening again? Let's bring in trial attorney Stuart Cohen, also criminal defense attorney Joseph Benedetto. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Stuart, why would this be the university's responsibility? If this was something that took place between two roommates, essentially, why does the university have a role here?
Well, first of all, we don't really know the facts of this case. And the notice that has been provided by the Clementi family preserves legal rights going forward. So we can't make any assumptions based on that. Having said that, universities are in the business of providing housing, and they undertake responsibilities. And in fact, as landlords, they have the highest standard of care in making sure that their tenants, the students, are taken care of. For example, if a student reports the smell of gas in the dormitory, is there any question that that should be promptly investigated? And if there is a dangerous condition or situation, that should be immediately taken care of. I think everybody in this discussion would agree that that should happen.
You mentioned that they have. Let me interrupt you for just a second. You mentioned that what they have filed is a piece of court paper that essentially preserves their right to sue, and that is what Paul Minardi, of the family's attorney, is saying. Here's part of a statement that we received from him. He says, nothing has been filed with a court. We have not reached a final decision as to whether a lawsuit will be commenced against Rutgers. The notice of tort claim is required to be filed within 90 days by a New Jersey statute to preserve the right to sue a public entity. But clearly, Joseph, they are thinking along those lines. Should they sue the university? Or, I mean, is there a case here if they sue the university?
John, let me get this out. I mean, this is clearly a tragic event. No one should be forced to endure the pain that's associated with this allegation. However, if it is in fact filed, it's highly skeptical. I mean, it's clear from the evidence here that Rutgers University clearly did not have knowledge that this did in fact happen. I mean, what are we looking to do? Are we looking to create another chapter from the great book of 1984 where Big Brother is watching? Do we have to instill, cameras in dorm rooms? This is a highly skeptical suit. It's clear from the facts that we know thus far that it would be a stretch to assume that Rutgers University would in fact have knowledge that this gentleman would go this far and take his own life.
Here's a statement from the university. We at the university share the family's sense of loss of their son, who was a member of our community. We also recognize that a grieving family may question whether someone or some institution could somehow have responsibility for their son's death. While the university understands this reaction, the university is not responsible for Tyler Clementi's suicide. At the end of the day, Stuart, he did take his own life.
Again, we really don't know the facts, but let me say this. Universities put resident assistants in charge of dormitories. Let's assume, for purpose of this discussion, that the resident assistant was warned that there was harassment going on and that the resident assistant took no action.
Well,
let me finish.
What about, did he actually,
you won't let me finish?
Did he request to be removed from that dormitory? And from the information, you don't have now, the answer is no.
You don't have any of the facts more than I do. And so what I was about to say was that if the facts of the case developed that a resident assistant had that information and took no action, that would create a legal duty for the university to act. And before anyone comes to a quick judgment, I think we ought to let the facts play out and not limit the ability of the family to investigate and think about this tragic situation, Stuart, and what their alternatives are.
I agree with you. The issue is notice, whether or not they had notice of this situation. But based upon the facts, as we know them currently, There is nothing that states that the university was placed on notice, and quite frankly, it's a stretch to even imagine that even if they were placed on notice, that this in fact would happen.
Gentlemen, we're going to have to end the discussion there. Joseph DiBenedetto and
enough.
Stuart Cohen, thank you both for joining us. We'll continue to keep our viewers apprised of what happens in that case.
Thank you.
Did you do any online shopping?